Corn and soybean sales opportunities, how long they are going to last? Jerry Gidel is ready to answer all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have had a week with some positive numbers. We have had some reported soybean sales to China from the US, but also there was a major sorghum sale that was reported, and I think it's also marketing impacting.
Oh yes. The thing that we did have the offer from President Trump last week about another 8 million metric tons didn't really stir the markets up big time, but it was noted and that they supposedly have opened up some of their storage to put in these new beans and that kind of stuff. But the early week 230,000 ton sale to China, says, oh, well, is that the new buy to tie up with this 8 million metric tons, or is it part of the old purchase that was 12 million before? So that sparked things up, turned the technicals around, got things kind of optimistic, more talk about potential Chinese buying and that type of thing. And it was definitely the highlight. It did swing us back up, though, to just into that 1130, 1140 zone, which is been a tough one to get through. From there, the also, the ConAb numbers that came out early midweek on soybeans, a lot of talk down there, 180 to 182 metric tons on a crop for this current year. Not that ConAb doesn't know that and understand the idea that maybe we don't need on 180, 182, and they came out with the 178 midweek, so that maybe added a little bit of firmness to the market when it came out along the way. Uh, One thing, though, that was noted from Paraguay is that they got a super looking crop here. And if you think about where the rains have been and the timeliness and that kind of stuff, they're talking about 11, I think 11.5 actually, which is a substantial crop. They've never had 11. If they had it, was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
right
the
though.
record, the previous record was slightly over 10 millimetric.
Exactly. And so this thing was pushing it past that magic 10, 10, 5 somewhere in there. Anyway, that kind of maybe held things back about blasting through this 1140 zone. From there, uh, one thing that in the soybean area, and that while we're covering it is that NOPA is going to put out their January crush on Tuesday, since we do have a president's holiday here in the U.S., and so there won't be any Sunday night and Monday daily trading activity. And so the expectations is down a little bit from last month's 225 million down to 218.5. I was looking to 219 million. A lot of people on the 218, so we split the difference there. From that standpoint, along the way, bean oil has really been the leader here in the products of that. So that has all to do with the likelihood that the U.S. is going to use a lot more in the bio of their renewable diesel demand, and that means less soybean oil sales in the export markets, and that's why they've been a little firm there. So, there we go. Uh, Combination of a few new interesting things, some ideas about some potential additional business, could be coming. I don't know. It's a
So
tricky one
yeah,
right now.
coming back to my introduction here. So do you think this optimism is going to last, or this is just sporadic demand?
I think it's got a sporadic demand and also the fact that it could easily be the last bit of the previous uh, ideas that China was buying. Oh, and they could have had one last person that decided he needed some coverage before he waiting for South American supplies to come in, that type of thing. From there, on the soybean side of things, I'm cautionary on that one right now that we've got a lot of push above the 1140 zone. Uh, that's been kind of the top range. I think we had a 1150 there on March once back in January when things were still some uncertainties in South America. And I think there are still some uncertainties in Argentina, but we're lots of good reports rolling out of the northern part of Brazil at this point. We've had some rains. That's been also a factor in here. I wouldn't. That's an interesting one. I've heard some areas up there actually have got too much rain and started to mess with the beans quality, but it's always a mystery as exactly what's going on in some of those northern Mato Grosso, northern Goiás.
Yeah, and on the background this week, we also had the fact that cattle prices they have jumped again, and I think it's worrisome for many sectors in the economy, especially the consumer.
Oh yeah, well, uh, that's a feature on this thing. The the cattle side of things in the U.S. is also tied into what's going on with the grazing situation, things like that, and what the quality of the wheat crop's going to be. That's a feature that we really don't have a good handle on until we get into well, the warm weather we're going to have in this coming week has got people kind of optimistic about uh, getting a sense of where the winter kill might be. I think it might be a tad early on that, but in some ways, if it does start greening up, that's way, way too early in February here. Puts them in more potential problems further down the road because there's a lot of times that have cold temperatures in the. You really need to be below 20 on Celsius, or excuse me, on Fahrenheit, maybe in the 10 to 15 zone down there on wheat, particularly to dang it around. But that's a feature out there at this point. The one thing that you mentioned here before we got on was the fact that the Chinese have been a terror here buying sorghum. They've bought 2.5 million metric tons of sorghum over the last 6, 8 weeks, according to resources on Reuters at this point, which is kind of an unusual situation. Uh, they tend to buy corn, that kind of stuff. But I think that's one of their diversions they've done in the past to buy a feed grain that's not really noted. And so people don't, and I didn't notice it either that they bought that much and that. And they also supposedly bought like 1 million metric tons of barley the last 2 or 3 months. So there you go. We've got two of the secondary feed grains out there that they're utilizing as feeding components. So does that suggest that the last 2 years of big crops in corn production over there really might not be the best quality? You talked about some issues about harvesting corn in above 15% and that kind of stuff, and you put it in there. Sometimes it doesn't dry down; it just kind of heats up and it turns out to be a mess. So that is a possibility that's also showing his hand here. So that'll be something to continue to watch very closely here.
Yes, I agree with you, and also we cannot skip to talk about the South American crop. I don't think we have any breaking news about the South American crop. But still, Argentina does not have enough moisture, and Brazil might have still a big crop.
Yeah, the northern areas continue to talk about and the reports about the yields that harvest there. Now, the one thing we've got the same situation that's kind of popped up where the rain activity here in Mato Grosso, Goiás, and the northern areas have been slowed down the so-called harvest progress there. It didn't get down into Paraná. Right now, Rio Grande is still a ways away, so we don't even know what kind of yields are going to have. And that to some extent ties into what's happened over in Argentina and their northern areas and that, which have had, like you mentioned, sporadic kind of rains and that it's, so there's some uncertainty there about things. Now, does that mean that that there's a lot of talk in the world in Brazil that they got a 181, 82. There's some people really, Latin bloods always love to get a big crop idea out there, and that. And I don't know if this really has. I'd say there's a 180 crop out there, 81, but I'm not sure I'd see any 84s, 85, stuff like that. But, you know, that's another feature. While I guess I'm a little cautionary here to utilize this rally to add another 10% in the bucket on U.S. soybeans in the short term. Still got at least 50% of our crop yet to market, and we'll see what the rest of the things happen there. One kind of twisted scenario here, we finally ended up getting a trade agreement with India in that, and uh, the Indian producers over there really saw that there was an opportunity to market some wheat and that and get some higher prices on export sales and that. And so it looks like there's a 2 to 2.5 million metric tons of wheat uh, potential coming out of India at this point. So, and also some sugar, which they also kind of hoard that stuff and keep that particular cost down since it's really a big human one to say the least from there. So interesting world out there on wheat. I think the U.S. has got a bubbling concern here that some of this cold weather we had back, the heavy duty stuff early there that came in and we didn't have snow cover from southern Oklahoma, West Texas, parts of the Mid South, and that could be damaged. But unfortunately, we don't know what that is until we get the winter to know how much winter killer was until we start actually greening up. Now that's going to be an interesting twist, and we're getting some mid 50s here in the Midwest, so maybe we're going to get some 60s out there in Southwest, which could be interesting. That's going to be a feature we also watch. But right now, at least, I guess I'm cautious as we had this rally up here towards the highs of the recent trading range on beans, and throwing a little bit in the pot, I think, is the way to go here and that just to kind of keep some money out there. The corn market still we're the one thing we're going to get later this coming week is the USDA's annual ag outlook market, and there will be a survey of expectations of what corn plantings and soybean plantings, wheat will be, and I think the corn plantings, I think, will dip in the 3.5 to 4 million category, while bean plantings might go in the 3 to 3.5 million increase. I haven't got a great feel for it just yet. I got to work on it this weekend. And that wheat, not much change officially there in the winter wheat numbers we had earlier this winter, back in January, and that. But I do think that harvested numbers. Because of that big jump in Oklahoma seedings for wintering feeder cattle won't be there, and so I'm kind of looking for a million down on planted and possibly some increases in oats and barley and sorghum maybe because of this recent sales out here. But that will be some features people will look at on Thursday and Friday when the USDA puts out their early numbers. They're just like us guessing on things. They don't have any survey or any kind of thing to look at. But there's a logical reasons. This corn market has way too much corn, so we need to have less going forward, and we could use some more beans if we get China back in our neighborhood to be a consistent buyer.
All right, I think we're wrapping it up. Thank you so much, Jerry.
You bet. I think we jabbered too long. Bye bye.